Sometimes you don't need all of the functions that a camera gives you because you're never gonna use them. You're just paying for basically the aesthetics and having the top of the line camera. Hello, this is Francois. Welcome to The Image Eye. This is a channel dedicated to helping photographers and videographers find the appropriate gear to do the best job within their field. Today, I want to talk to you about a camera that has become my favorite go-to camera for videography and for photography, and that is the Sony A7 IV. When I began my photography journey, I started with Sony's A7 III. It was Sony's premier entry-level full-frame camera at the time of purchase. It was incredible. So when the Sony A7 IV came out, I was torn because I wanted to keep my A7 III. However, I could not resist the specs that I saw listed for the A7 IV. I've had this camera for 1.5 years. And when I first bought this camera, I did not really understand how to use it. It was a little different than the Sony A7 III. It was not that big of a leap as far as functionality. However, there were some specs that I didn't fully understand how to take advantage of, and I still don't use the camera this day to its fullest capabilities. I've used this camera for 1.5 years now, and let me tell you, I absolutely love it. I have several Sony cameras in my repertoire. I have the Sony A7 IV, I have the Sony ZV-1, I have the Sony A7s3, I have the Sony FX30, and I have the Sony A6400. Yes, A6400. And I love all of those cameras, but I just find myself always coming back to the A7 IV when I'm out doing street photography, or when I'm doing wedding photography, or even sometimes when I'm vlogging. Flip out screen. It kind of changed my photography life as well as my videography life. As a photographer, when I'm taking photos, I use the EVF, especially in the A7 III. The A7 III had a very decent EVF. Since this camera, this A7 IV has a flip out screen, I have begun taking my photos with the flip out screen. So the only time that I use the EVF now is if I'm reviewing a photo that I've taken, because just using the flip out screen is so much more convenient than it is to just look through the EVF. Also, with the flip out screen, I can, I guess, align my shots and frame my shots a bit differently than I could with the A7 III. Now I can turn the A7 IV into different ways in order to get the perfect shot that I want. The second thing that I've come to love about the A7 IV is the switch dial between photography mode and videography mode. This mode is genius. I love that I can save my photography specs in one setting, and then when I want to shoot videos, I can quickly switch over to videos, and all of my saved video specs will be there. I don't have to do anything except press the record button. Super convenient, and it just makes it a joy for me to keep in my bag, especially when I'm traveling. The next thing that I love about the A7 IV is the enhanced grip, the ergonomics of this camera over its predecessor, the A7 III. My hands are quite large, and with the A7 III, I would have to kind of try to fit my fingers inside, and sometimes it would come up against my fingers, would come up against the lens. And even though it wasn't too painful, it just felt a little uncomfortable. But with the A7 IV, I can firmly grip this camera and have a lot of room between my fingers and the lens. The next thing I love about this camera is the megapixel count. So my Sony A7 III had 24 effective megapixels when taking photos or videos. And the A7 IV has a slight increase to 33 megapixels. I love to take photos at night. I am crazy about night photography. I thought having an increased amount of megapixels would hurt my night photography because there would be an added increase in noise that would come from the additional megapixels. But I'm telling you, I was so wrong. Having 33 megapixels does nothing but enhance my ability to take great photos, great portraits at night. I love carrying this thing around. I love having 33 megapixels in which I can use to crop in on an image. If you need to crop, 33 megapixels is pretty good. I actually think that 33 megapixels from the A7 IV does better than my 24 megapixels from the A7 III. The jump from 24 megapixels to 33 megapixels is well worth it. Let's talk about the videography side of this beast of a camera. There's 4K 60 frames a second, which is crazy good. I don't know very many content creators who use 4K 60 for a lot of their creative content. Most of the people that I know are producing just YouTube videos. So they're shooting in 4K 30 or just flat HD 30 frames per second. If you need to use 4K 60, there is a 1.5 crop on this camera, which some people may like, some people may not like. It just depends on your preference. If you absolutely need to shoot in 4K 120, some people I've heard on the internet, in the YouTube world, complain, why is it that Sony released this camera and there's no 4K 120? Well, to be honest, I haven't seen very many people shooting videos in 4K 120. That's super slow motion that 95, probably 98% of content creators are not going to use. We don't need 4K 120. Okay, now that we've gotten all of the technicalities out of the way, let me just talk to you about my practical real world use of this camera. I am a photographer first, based in Seoul, Korea. I'm from the United States, but I live in Seoul, Korea. And whenever I go out, this camera is always in my bag. Why? I love the way that it feels. I love the way that it looks. I love the images that come directly out of this camera. This is just a wonderful tool to have. If I need to shoot in burst mode, I can always use the 10 frames a second that this camera shoots in. This camera has 2 slots for a CF Express Type A card and a regular SD card, but I don't use CF Express Type A's because they're really expensive. Also, this camera has a microphone input and it has USB Type C charging, which is, I mean, I can take the same charger that I use for my cell phone, for my smartphone, to charge this camera. This is just great. It's a great camera. It's a wonderful camera to have. When Sony released other cameras, I considered trading in this camera to get maybe the A7r5 or the A1. The A1 right now is it's a fantastic camera, don't get me wrong. However, it's just too much of a camera. Sometimes you don't need all of the functions that a camera gives you because you're never gonna use them. You're just paying for basically the aesthetics and having the top of the line camera. The A7 IV is perfect. It sits between the A1 and it sits above the A7 III, which are 2 of the best cameras Sony has ever produced. The price sits in between those 2 cameras as well. I believe when the A7 III came out, it was about $2,000 US, and when the A1 came out, here in Korea, it's more than $5,000, maybe 5,500. I can't remember exactly. I'll put the price in the video. But this camera, when I bought it, it was about 2.5 million Korean won, which is like 2,500 US dollars. But I got it a little bit cheaper because I know some folks. The more I talk about this camera, the bigger the smile on my face gets because I really enjoy using it. I think if you're in the line for a full frame mirrorless camera and you just want to get started into the Sony ecosystem, then you can't go wrong with the A7 IV. I'll post some photos that I've taken with this camera and a link to my Instagram page so you can check out other photos that I've taken. I hope that this video served its purpose to give you some hands-on insight about the use of the A7 IV to help you in your choice to buy this camera or not. Anyways, guys, thanks a lot for joining the channel. I hope to see you in the next one with more content about how I can help you to buy the appropriate camera gear to do the best job that you can in your field. Okay, guys, take care. Speak to you soon. Peace.